I'm Ben Data, CEO of Food Maven and a Denver Startup Week co-founder. Denver Startup Week has always been about community. And today, it's more important than ever to show how we can come together to create opportunities out of the challenges that we face. Opportunities for every member of the community. Before we dive in, we want to say a special thank you to our 2020 Denver Startup Week sponsors who make it all possible. Thanks to our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Xero. And our track sponsors who have made all the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 and the Public Works, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement this week. Thank you to Wix, Kenzen, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. You help make all of this possible.
At Zayo, our fiber fuels global innovation. Everything we do, everything we can imagine. Never in history has innovation happened at such a rapid pace. And all of it depends on bandwidth connectivity. Millions of miles of Zayo's fiber span the globe, traveling unique routes, providing dense metro footprints, offering next-generation solutions. We didn't just see the future of fiber, we built it. We delivered it. Every millisecond, our fiber is fueling crucial operations, breakthroughs, and innovations for the world's most impactful companies. Companies that are disrupting the status quo, igniting imaginations, revolutionizing industries, and creating brand new ones. Our customers are advancing wireless communication, transforming healthcare, changing education, revolutionizing transportation, redefining banking, powering retail, and upping the game in esports. These innovators rely on Zayo's fast, secure fiber networks to connect their offices, factories, data centers, clouds, exchanges, venues, and more, ultimately fueling innovation and transforming lives. And behind those fiber connections, Zayo is all about human connections. We take ownership in all we do. Our employees take the initiative to deliver trusted solutions to every customer and make their experience effortless. We are energetic and entrepreneurial, a partner to rely on. We are Zayo. We are working with our customers on what comes next, constantly anticipating what can be. We are fueling global innovation that is changing the world.
Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Denver Startup Week Day 4. We did it. It's Thursday. My name is Ryan Margolis. I am one of the members of the organizing committee for Denver Startup Week. Excited to welcome you all to this session this morning. Where we have an international flavor to it, which is awesome. Before we get started, a huge thank you for everyone joining. This is the first ever virtual Denver Startup Week. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we're more powerful when we come together as a community to share ideas and help make each other better. No better place for that to happen than the Denver Boulder tech community. So here we are virtually showing off what Denver's made of. Again, excited that y'all are here with us. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions accessible, a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, or the combination of any of those. There is something for everyone at Denver Startup Week. A quick shout out again to our sponsors. Saw Ben's intro there, and then Zayo, of course, for everything from the Spotlight track. They're the reason Denver Startup Week is free every year. So huge shout out to them and appreciate the support. Now I'm honored to be able to pass this off to Aaron. I believe you're jumping on to kick off the session. Excited to learn more from you as we talk this morning about innovation in a global pandemic.
So thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I hope everyone has their morning coffee or their morning tea with them. I know our session is a bit on the early side for those of us on Mountain Time, but there's actually a very good reason for that, which is that we're lucky enough to have panelists on both sides of the pond, as we say it, or on both sides of the Atlantic joining us, because of course in the United Kingdom right now it's about 3 p.m. So in fact, much closer to happy hour over there than to morning coffee, but go figure. So welcome to our virtual Denver Startup Week event, Innovation in a Global Pandemic, the United Kingdom and Colorado Rising to the Challenge. We are so excited to be here today, so excited to have all of you here today. And I should say absolutely thrilled to be a sponsor of Denver Startup Week for the second year running. This is such an important activity for the Colorado community. So we are so proud to be a part of it. I'm Erin Kuhn. I lead the UK government office in Denver, meaning despite this very American accent, I am actually employed by the British government and I serve as a diplomat here in Colorado, charged with building and strengthening the special relationship between the UK and Colorado. Many of you may not realize this, but the UK is actually by far and away the largest foreign investor in this state. There are more than 200 British companies in Colorado employing over 18,000 Coloradans, and these numbers are growing year upon year. The UK is also a top 4 export market for Colorado goods and services, and these exports fuel an additional 10,000 jobs in the state. We also hope that the free trade agreement, which is currently being negotiated between the US and the UK, will increase these trade ties even further and help both the American and British economies recover. So given these strong ties, again, between the UK and Colorado, we thought it would be fascinating to look at how industry and research organizations in both of these communities responded to the needs of COVID-19 and innovated and transformed their products and services and research to fight this global pandemic. So this panel will really explore the theme of innovation in the face of a global crisis. And we'll also look at lessons learned and how this work might be applied to future global crises or future global issues. And finally, we'll explore opportunities for partnership and collaboration as well. I'm so excited to say that we have a fantastic panel of experts here today. I'm so grateful to all of them. Before launching into our discussion, I want to take a moment to introduce just a few people. I'm joined up here on the screen by 2 friends and teammates. The first is Isabel O'Brien, who oversees UK trade and investment work in the central US for the tech and creative sectors. I'm also joined by James Cummings, who works for the Mayor of London's economic development arm, which is called London and Partners. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce our moderator, Eric Drummond. It is such a pleasure for us to have him here today. He'll be guiding us through this conversation. Eric is an entrepreneur, business development, ecosystem builder, and a former partner at one of the globe's largest international law firms. He's had just an incredible career. He's been a mayor. He's done significant work with the U.S. Department of Energy, including many of its federal labs here in Colorado, like NCAR and NREL. He served on the board of Colorado's Venture Capital Authority, and most recently, he founded the Innovation Corridor, which is really cool. It's a unique B2B technology enhancement and investment platform composed of national labs, Fortune 100 companies, academic institutions, entrepreneurs, federal agency partners, you name it. So thank you again, Eric, for joining us. Finally, I just would really like to invite all of our audience members and participants to submit questions for our panelists. We really want this to feel like a conversation and a dialogue. So what you can do is either use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen or use the chat button and just start throwing those questions up there as soon as they pop into your head. And we'll start going through them a little bit later in the session when we come to the Q&A section. But that's all from me. Thank you again for joining, and I'll pass it over to you, Eric, to take it forward.
Thank you, Erin. What a wonderful introduction, both to our group, your organization, the wonderful people in the UK Technology and Creative Office, like Isabel O'Brien and James Cummings and others at London and Partners. And thank you for the kind words about my company. So, we haven't, as Erin suggested, we have a really amazing panel this morning, a great cross-section of companies and entrepreneurs and innovators. And so I thought what we would do is we would start out by having each one of our panelists take a minute or so and introduce themselves and kind of reflect a little bit on their own particular background, and then we'll jump into our panel session this morning. So maybe we can start off with Sarah Thunberg.
Good morning. Hello, everybody. It's so great to be here. Denver Startup Week is where I got my start as a tech entrepreneur and a CEO. And so it's great to be here bright and early. in addition to being the co-founder and CEO of Geospiza, an early stage tech company in Denver, where we do large scale data analytics to support decision-making in crisis, particularly climate change, I was tapped in March by Governor Polis to lead the state's innovation response team to COVID. So over the last 6 months, I think it's 6, COVID time, I have been responsible for bringing entrepreneurial thinking, the startup sort of way of doing business, innovation, and speed as we have in the private sector to government and to our response to COVID. So I've been in this really interesting place, and I'm excited to talk about sort of how you can run a company in COVID and also help run a response to COVID in the government side. So I've seen a really interesting set of things. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Absolutely, Sarah. Thank you very much. Nigel Hutchison.
Hello, everyone. My name's Nigel Hutchinson. I'm VP North America for Kainos, and I lead our Workday practice here across the US and Canada. Ordinarily based in Atlanta, but have been back living in the UK and joining you today from Northern Ireland, where our home is. Kainos, what can I tell you about Kainos? We're a long-established technology company headquartered in the UK. We've been in business for 34 years, and we have operations which cover most parts of Europe and here in the US, including in Denver, which is a recent development for the company. We provide a range of digital services to companies in all sectors, particular strength in healthcare, where we've been a long-standing provider of solutions to the NHS, or the National Health Service, here in the UK. So really happy to be part of the panel today and look forward to some great discussion.
Glad to have you, Nigel. And then how about my good friend, Rob Lubeck?
Good morning, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here with all. I am Rob Lubeck. I am the Chief Growth Officer with Burst IQ. We are a Denver-based company, and Burst IQ empowers organizations to manage sensitive data assets with the ability to unlock deep connections between diverse data sources through our secure global data network. You know, we manage data very differently from traditional data systems. We combine blockchain, big data, machine intelligence, and we build longitudinal, multidimensional data profiles of people, processes, and things, and enable the connections between them. And so as COVID was very relevant to us, which we'll get into in a little bit, and I look forward to this panel today.
Thanks, Rob. And Dr. Mark Mawson.
Hi, I'm Mark Mawson. I work at the Hartree Centre in the UK. We're a department within UK Research and Innovations, which is the UK equivalent of the National Labs structure that you guys have over in the States. I'm currently based in Warrington, which is bang in the middle of Liverpool and Manchester. So I'm right at the interface between the hottest footballing rivalry in the world at the moment, which is a wonderful place to be. The Hartree Centre, as a department within UKRI, we focus primarily on supercomputers and AI. We were established in 2013, just as that kind of technology was beginning to come mainstream and kick off. We do primarily academic research and also focus on taking that research and getting it out into industry. So we work with organizations from single-person startups all the way up to multinationals and to the public sector in the UK as well. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what's going on in the tech startup community in Denver. So I think it's fascinating.
Mark, glad to have you join us. Let's kick off our panel. So, you know, my first question is to the whole panel here. We've had so many different changes that we've had to face as a result of the pandemic. And I'm wondering if you could describe how your business or organization transformed its product solutions or services or research to respond to the needs of COVID-19. And then maybe, Mark, you know, we can start with you and then we can work our way back around in our panel.
Sure, great. So UKRI and the Hartree Centre, I'm going to talk about it in sort of two different aspects. And one is the organizational way that we responded, and the other is the actions of sort of individuals and small groups. So as an organization, UKRI is responsible for providing all the research funding in the UK. So within 2 or 3 weeks, they freed up £20 million to provide funding for the Oxford vaccine that's currently in early stage trials at the moment. They followed up a couple of months later with 750 million. And that was largely for small R&D focused businesses that we needed to keep working during the pandemic. And then they're also continuing to review how we process and peer review our funding applications to speed them up. So that's kind of at an organizational level. But within the Hartree Centre, really, it was the actions of individuals that made a big difference. We have 60 or 70 scientists on site in our department and 4,000 people in the whole organization on 2 different sites in the UK. So individuals were responsible for, one, taking the first real imaging of the coronavirus that anybody took at a molecular and protein level. 2, we took a lot of our advanced manufacturing techniques that we primarily use to build synchrotrons and large lasers and use those to build PPE for people. And the Hartree Centre has invested a lot of time working with Folding at Home, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but if you're not, Folding at Home is a kind of citizen scientist initiative where people across the world donate time on their computers to run simulations of how various possible drugs might interact with the coronavirus. Since March, when they first started running simulations, they've gone from about 12,000 people donating time to well over 1 million. The Folding at Home computer as a whole is now the biggest computer in the world by a factor of 10. And it really sort of stumped them in terms of the sheer amount of data that they were generating. So whereas most people would need a supercomputer to run their simulations, they needed a supercomputer just to analyze the data once the simulations had finished. We've got quite a lot of experience with that, so we volunteered. And within 2 or 3 weeks, we were up and running. Folding at Home published a paper very recently where I think they've gone through and identified 200 possible compounds to treat the virus, and they continue to work on that. So those are kind of the 2 different aspects that we've been looking at from a UK RI perspective. One, around funding and putting in place the mechanisms to allow researchers to tackle the problem, and 2, individuals and groups of people who've been able to repurpose the work that they're doing now in order to address the challenges more quickly.
Thank you, Mark. Sarah, how about your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So our organization, as an early stage tech startup, really struggled in the early days. We work in the risk management space, and those are our primary customers. And so big enterprise companies who were trying to decide sort of what COVID meant for them, their employees, shut down all of their travel, shut down all of their sales conversations, also got pretty restrictive in their engagement because everybody who was our customer began focusing on COVID and how they could keep their companies afloat, how they were going to manage work from home, all of these things. So we went from a place of a really robust sales pipeline, a lot of sort of deals in flow, to nothing. And we very, very quickly sort of refocused we're a SaaS business, and we really refocused and brought on some new data, built some new dashboarding for our customers, and moved into being able to support the work that they were doing on COVID. So we built a real-time dashboard that any of our customers could upload, could enter in one of their physical locations and get a sense of what the policies were, what infection levels were, and how that might influence their business. So we had the benefit of nimbleness of being a small, early-stage team. But I will say it's been a tough one. I think.
I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think one of the benefits for us has been that people who were skeptical about the disruptions that climate change, whether it's physical weather or a global pandemic, could have on their business, have really refocused and really said, I don't think we want to do it this way again. So how can you help us? How can you give us some data analytics, some visualizations, some decision support that can help us avoid this sort of incredible disruption in the future? I think we've seen in the United States, especially the compounding challenge of COVID plus wildfire plus hurricane plus flood has been really challenging for companies. And so we feel like we are starting to reopen a path to success. But it's been a tough one for us, a tough one for all of our customers, and a tough one for all of you, I would assume.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I'm going to move on to Rob, but I'd like you to think about sharing with us when we come back around the kinds of things that worked and 1 or 2 things that didn't seem to work as well, although you had thought otherwise. So if you'll think about that, we'll let Rob tell us how his organization has addressed the pandemic world.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, thank you. So when COVID hit, one of the things that we noticed was that there was tons of research, tons of developers trying to work on solutions, and everybody was kind of working independently on trying to either figure out what was going on, how to solve it, why outcomes were different. And so we kind of took the stance that we wanted to help enable connectivity and collaboration across the world. We truly feel that collaboration is the ultimate key to success, especially when it's like a global pandemic like we're facing right now. And so we opened up our platform to the world for free. And we invited researchers and organizations and governments and developers to join our platform and start working together in a more efficient and collaborative way to try to help solve the problems. And we started out by loading hundreds of data sets on the platform, everything from COVID to other kind of related and social behavioral determinants of health on our platform. And we feel like it's been really successful. We've got over 100 companies on the platform right now that are all working together. One of the more exciting outcomes was that we teamed up with the American Heart Association and Hitachi, and we published a worldwide data challenge. And it was really invited all the research developers to examine really the under-resourced communities and how race and outcomes are being affected by COVID-19, which is, I'm sure everyone knows how critical that is. And there's so many disparities on outcomes based on the world today. So, COVID has definitely been a bad thing in our world, as everybody knows, a horrible thing. But one thing that I do feel like it's brought the world together in new and unique ways. And hopefully it'll kind of prepare us better when the next world issue comes across all of our desks.
Wow, thank you, Rob. Good work, great team. Nigel?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things with regards to Kainos and our response to COVID. As I mentioned in our introduction, we've been working in healthcare for a number of years and providing solutions to the NHS. And traditionally, those solutions have been targeted at the hospital trust level, or think of a trust as being equivalent to an IDN or a network in the US. And those solutions have been, to help provide that system of record so that doctors and nurses can treat patients safely. Increasingly of late, we've been doing a lot of work with some of the national agencies in the UK, such as NHS Digital. And one of the services that we've developed is the NHS app. This is an application available to every patient in England and sort of acts as a digital front door for them to access healthcare services, whether it's booking an appointment with your primary care physician or ordering repeat prescriptions, those common tasks that really place a lot of burden on the health system. So the NHS app has been live for some time, rolled out throughout England, and it was really the perfect way for the NHS to address some of those national level requirements and get those into the hands of patients so that they could really remove some of the burdens off the health system. One example of that was the requirement related to COVID-19 and the use of the service to request isolation notes. So if a patient exhibited signs of COVID, they needed to go to their physician, their doctor, to get a note to say, actually, I need to isolate or I need to take some time off work. So that system was built and commissioned in record time in weeks and rolled out. And in the first couple of months, supported the generation of 1.5 million isolation notes across the NHS. So some fantastic volumes there. And then I think outside healthcare, across our commercial business, particularly the work that we're doing with Workday customers, organizations are in turmoil and they are faced with, either economic difficulties. They're not sure how their business is going to perform. They're having to deal with suddenly moving a large sections of their workforce at home. Certainly with our organization, we sort of moved to a completely virtual organization overnight, with 1,700 employees globally, and all of our offices were closed and all of those people needed to move home. And they sort of need support to do that. You need to support them through planning solutions. We do a lot of work around financial and workforce planning to support those organizations. So what if scenarios, what happens if I do move, large teams off site or shut offices temporarily. What impact does that have on my financial plans, my workforce plan? So it's been quite amazing just to see the variety of requirements coming from customers, and the way in which we've had to support them to derive better business outcomes.
Thank you, Nigel. One of the things that I've experienced is, like all of us have, it's just the sheer scope of the seams in our society that have been exposed by the pandemic. Societal issues, economic issues, political repercussions, the seams and gaps in our healthcare system. And all of us trying to figure out how best to deploy our resources and assets to support each other and to support our communities and then our communities across the globe. Sarah, circling back around to you, would you be willing to share with us, one or two things that you seem to work and a couple that you anticipated might work but didn't quite come to fruition?
Sure. I really resonate with both what you just said and then what Nigel said. And sort of two of the things we've observed in the company and also in my work at the state is the speed at which innovation has happened over COVID. That we've just been able, speaking of, so Nigel's isolation notes app, we're seeing everybody moving overnight to work from home. So these things that we really were hesitant on and we weren't sure about as culture, as society, as workplace, accelerated at unbelievable speed. We were able to deploy apps that would take us years in days. We were able to move 90% of our workforce globally home, it literally overnight. And so I think one of the things that really resonated with our company was working at the speed of startup and really being able to help our customers unblock several of those things. So being there to be like, no, it's okay. It's okay. We here, like, you can experiment, you can try, and we need to move really quickly. So that really resonated with me. But then also one of the things that really worked for us and that we've had a lot of success around is hearing from lots of different customers that they're all worried or working on the same problem set. But because everybody's moving so fast and in such a sort of emotionally fraught place or worried place, there isn't the time to connect with your peers or connect with your colleagues. So everybody's moving very fast at the same things and really reinventing the wheel in every company, right? Like every company in the United States went to virtual and really fast and didn't have time to reflect on what's working, what's not working, what policies do we need. And so everybody developed the same policy, but independently. So we've had a lot of success around facilitating promising practices within companies or facilitating similar dashboarding, similar decision-making. The CEOs across the United States and big enterprise companies are all working on the same problem sets. And so we can optimize, provide efficiencies, give a little bit of lesson learned really quickly. And that's been incredibly powerful for us. And I think it's been good for everybody. And the last thing I'll say is that we've been doing a lot of documenting in that vein, a lot of documenting of what's working and what's not working. And I think the neurological and psychological research is very clear that when you're in fight or flight, which we could argue we all are because this is such a difficult moment, you don't remember things as well. So we've worked really hard to document what worked, what didn't work, and to some degree, what we might want to keep. We talk a lot at the government level about the new normal. And there are incredible things that we might not want to get rid of. Virtual remote work, for example. It's allowed people to really upend housing markets, to be where they want to be. I have friends, this is a totally anecdotal story, but who just moved from the Bay Area to Denver. and they're saving $3,000 a month on rent. I'm like, that's a huge win. They get to hike, they get to have their dog at a dog park. And so I think that this documentation of what's working and what's not working has also been a real power for GeoSvisa, that we're able to support our customers in that so they can make decisions in the long run that help their employees have better lives, have better, their companies can have more revenue, all of the things, and also be more resilient companies.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Rob, Nigel, Mark, would any of you would like to weigh in a little bit on one or two of the issues that your company, organization, or research center has faced, and how you've addressed it, or what you've learnings from it?
Yeah, certainly we very much resonate with what Sarah was saying in terms of speed to market. You know, this is an international crisis, and you've got to be geared and organized to respond to market needs faster than ever before. You know, and it's not just you know, in just what you produce, but it's even on, you know, how you contract for things, how you start up projects, how you collaborate with partners. That, you know, time is of the essence. I was talking about some of the apps that we've built there and some of the solutions. We're talking about deployment within weeks, days and weeks, not months and years. And you think of, you know, how companies used to buy IT solutions where they'd run an RFP process and everybody would respond and everybody would do their, you know, due diligence, etc. This speed to market is just something we've got to get past all of that and be able to respond quickly. I think then from a technology point of view, the second thing I'd make is that, you know, if ever there was a reason for organizations to move to the cloud and get off on-premise technology, it's now. You know, and things like I talked about financial planning or core financial systems, being able to use solutions like this, irrespective of where workers are, how they're organized, where partners are, I think it's imperative. And, you know, some of the partners that we work with, like AWS and Microsoft Azure, having the capability of their platforms to be able to scale instantly and support this just massive surge of demand, I think it's been critical to, you know, some of the ways that we've been able to respond successfully to this crisis.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, to follow kind of on Sarah and Nigel's, which I completely agree with both of their sentiments around kind of speed to market. But, you know, I'm always a little optimistic and kind of silver lining type of views. But one of the cool things that I've seen this all done is, you know, we have now, to their point, we've accelerated things to market and technology that have so needed in the past, but COVID has brought that immediate need to today. I mean, one example is telemedicine. And I mean, everyone's been talking about telemedicine for, I don't know, at least the last decade, if probably not even longer than that. And it's really cool that, you know, telemedicine is so critical to support the rural economies and the rural people, you know, all across the globe. And because of this quick acceleration and an immediate need, it's forced companies to relook at the whole market and come out with unbelievable solutions that are working today. And I guarantee that those solutions will be used and they'll be made better and better, but for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years until the next kind of new technology comes out. So there's some things I'm really excited about in digital front door, which Nigel talked about. And all these are so interrelated. And so, I mean, part of this is like, I'm excited to see all this stuff come to fruition so fast. And I am seeing just some incredible solutions come out of both small and large companies. The other thing I kind of like to see, it's allowing small companies to really make an impact in today's world. A lot of the smaller companies can react way quicker than a large of these global organizations. And so it's kind of a nice mix. We're seeing some really cool things out there.
Oh, very true. Thank you, Rob. So my next question, and then and Mark, if you had something that you wanted to weigh in, maybe you could frame it in the context of a question to the whole panel, but starting out being directed at you. So as Erin has suggested in her kind introduction about my organization, I work with a number of our nation's national labs. I have 2 Quaker National Lab partners And one of them owns and operates the largest and fastest high-performance supercomputer in the world dedicated to advanced energy and energy efficiency. So a lot of the analyses, applications of artificial intelligence to energy systems, things of that nature that we were doing before the pandemic are continuing forth. But I saw a need to go back and make some deeper inroads around basic studies that I thought would be foundational to supporting a transition to a more smart, a more efficient, a greater degree of carbon mitigation, a better ability to pull in entrepreneurs, innovators, federal agencies, local governments, all into this mix and then transact efficiently across a platform where all of us could work together. You know, I'm wondering, Mark, in your part of the world and the kind of research you've been doing, whether COVID specific or broader, if you've been involved in those kinds of endeavors, and if you would share with us what that's looked like, and maybe even whether or not it's expanded the collaborations you've been involved in or different solutions that you're assisting with.
Yeah, sure. So there's a number of different approaches that we take to this, and the US National Labs is a really good kind of example of the very extreme end of high performance computing. And what we tend to see is that the science is slightly ahead of where those big systems operate in terms of the algorithms and the techniques that they use, just because once you've perfected your particular method, there's then a whole nother set of work to do that might take a number of years just to get it to run on that particular system. So the large systems that are at the likes of Oak Ridge and Argonne, you need teams of tens or maybe hundreds of people just to write the software to run on them. So as people are coming up with newer and more interesting ways of solving the world's problems, there is a little bit of a lag there. What we are seeing is definitely the combination of methods. So certainly one of the more interesting things that's happened in COVID that's been punted around for a while is the mixture of kind of physics-based simulations and artificial intelligence. So there are a few white papers on this for kind of more engineering applications where you get an AI to predict how you think a physical environment is going to behave, and then you tidy up that prediction using the physics-based simulation. What a lot of the COVID research is doing now, which I think we're going to see much, much more of, is if you have a large possible space of solutions to the problem that you're looking at, I mean space in the mathematical sense there, so it might be a bit over people's heads, that's fine. When you look for the right answer, just doing it by a pure physics-based simulation is really, really, really computationally intensive. It takes a long time. And what we're finding is that AI is very good at getting you in the right approximate space. So for COVID, primarily what we do is look at how the coronavirus is moving and deforming over time. And then we look at how you can put drug molecules into that movement and deformation to stop it from doing it. So we use AI to predict which molecules we think have got a good chance of combining with the virus and stopping it from moving. And then we run the much more intensive physics-based simulations. Now we're starting to see that in engineering applications. We're starting to see it for things like aerospace simulations. We're starting to see it for things like transport mapping and travel. So where people are interested in how road networks behave over time, especially as one of the things that's becoming more apparent, certainly in the UK, is that as we come out of COVID, we're going to be doing it in a green fashion. Most combustion engine transport essentially stopped in the UK for 2.5, 3 months over the summer. And as we come back, there's a lot more people who are interested in bikes. There's a lot more people who are interested in public transport. And as we change the whole transport network across the country, there's a huge amount of simulation work that needs to be done to get that right so that we don't cause more problems than we solve. I hope that's somewhere useful.
Oh no, excellent, Mark. And the post-COVID world where we can accelerate some of the capabilities around analyzing advanced mobility solutions, more intelligent building systems, all critical. Nigel, Sarah, Rob, each of you had mentioned the newer collaborations that you've been involved in or supporting. And what we had found is the pandemic has accelerated the need to broaden the scope of participants to access highly sought after resources, critical global resources to make the connections. And I'm wondering what you've seen in your respective spheres. Specifically, Rob had already mentioned his work with Hitachi and others, but I was wondering if each of you might suggest one or two other instances that you'd like for us to know about that you think indicate where we're going in the future in terms of building new collaborations and supporting each other. Nigel?
Yeah, I think partnerships for us have always been really important and a big part of our strategy. I've mentioned a few of them as we've gone through. My own personal responsibility within the organization is to look after our Workday partnership and look after that whole practice in North America. And, that's a really important aspect of our business. And it's been great to see how that has actually grown and flourished throughout, the pandemic as organizations need the power of a platform like Workday to, plan faster, look after the financials and look after the workforce. I think as well, just to resonate with what Rob said around telehealth, again, looking at the healthcare side of our business, there's an interesting analogy there. I would agree with you, Rob, that, telehealth has been, something that has sort of promised a lot of benefit in the past, but sort of really needed something to kickstart it and make it mainstream. And, in our healthcare business back in the UK with the NHS, back to a previous role when I looked after that part of the business, we were talking about telehealth to the NHS. So we were almost blue in the face. It's the very obvious thing that should take care, costs and pressure, and save valuable time from valuable resources. And then suddenly you have a pandemic like COVID. That is absolutely the kickstart. In fact, there's a lot happening now across the NHS in terms of telehealth and telemedicine and virtual care. It's just the way it is, and I think it will be one of those things where it will be the way it is to stay as a result of this crisis.
Absolutely. I want to make sure that we save a few minutes for audience questions, but I'm hoping that to take at least a minute for Sarah to talk about her work with the governor's IRT team. And then I might mention in a minute or so my appointment to the Economic Stabilization and Recovery Commission and our formulation of Energized Colorado. But Rob, is there anything that you want to drill in a little deeper in terms of collaborations, or provide us a detail more on this larger, broader platform initiative that you rolled out this spring?
Yeah, so thanks, Eric. And I'll try to make it quick. I know we're getting close to the hour, but one of the things that, besides kind of the traditional collaboration, one of the things that I'm most excited about, which we're just starting to scratch the surface on right now, is the whole integration of omic data into all these analyses, genomic, there's so many different types. And I truly feel that that's going to be kind of the next future step in the healthcare world, is if you can start combining kind of outcomes and clinical data with some of the high level omic data and connecting these with patients and really going down to a one-to-one level, I think we're going to start seeing some incredible data and really kind of seeing the impact of why people are affected in some ways and why people are not affected in some ways. And then that's going to lead to the whole kind of designer type of pharmaceuticals and really kind of targeted stuff. So, there's a lot, but we're starting now to build some I can't talk about them, unfortunately, in public right now, but we're starting to build some pretty big relationships around that just to make that enablement happen.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. Sarah, could you take a minute and talk about your work with the COVID-19 Innovation Response Team for the government?
I can. I want to say one thing beforehand, which is building on the question that Nigel answered, sort of what has changed and what's incredibly powerful out of this moment. And one of the things I think in the United States we're seeing is the combination of COVID-19 and the virtualization that we've had as a result, and a moment of reckoning around structural racism and systemic racism in our systems. And the combination of those have allowed us to respond, I think, in the government and the private sector and the startup world to be more responsive and open our worlds to more diversity, more equity, more inclusion, because we've been able to virtualize. So Colorado is a pretty white place. We have a big population of Latinx individuals, but we have closed systems, and it's hard to increase sort of representation in government, in leadership, and boards. And through virtualization, we've been really able to do it in a way we hadn't been able to before, because we don't need somebody to come to our boardroom or to come into the office. So we can open things up and really draw on talent from around the world. And when I think about some of the things I want to see in the new normal and in forever of post-COVID time, that's one, that we're not so place-based and we're able to have more diversity and equity and inclusion in all of our leadership around the US especially. So I think it's been an interesting moment. I just wanted to say that. So on the governor's IRT, and then to both Rob and Mark and Nigel's points, social determinants of health and how people are individually disproportionately affected by COVID has been something our team has worked on a lot. And so pulling together big data around that and then being able to inform decision-making on the very highest policy level. So we do a lot of mobility data analytics and a lot of combining data sets to make actionable insights. And so I think that that's been some work of the IRT that's been really, really wonderful, as well as what we said earlier, which is the speed and power of the private sector to the government side. We used a really innovative procurement process to get a new contact tracing and case investigation solution for the Department of Public Health in Colorado. It would have normally taken a year to procure this multi-million-dollar solution. And we created a competitive process where there wasn't an RFP, but instead every vendor had to provide a sandbox environment that met certain requirements. And we were able to get such a better solution than we would have if we would have read, 10, 60-page papers about all the things they could have done. But instead we got to get in and experiment and try. And we got to do that with our partners, our local public health agencies who would have had to use it, who have to use it every day. I think we probably saved Colorado's taxpayers $15 million and have a way better solution. So I'm hopeful that we get to keep those too as we move into the new normal.
Fantastic. And then I thought I might take just a minute to describe my work on the governor's teams. We started out really in a twofold perspective. One was the kinds of things that we might develop team members, volunteers around an initiative to immediately address the ability to start to stabilize the economy. And so that was working on 30, 60, 90-day processes around paycheck protection, around access to grants, around basically just connecting people and making sure that minority, women-owned, and unrepresented communities understood how to interface with key people across the state driving these initiatives. We came up with a number of recommendations, many of which were entertained by the governor and his team, and we did it in pretty quick order. And then we transitioned to Energize Colorado, which is a nonprofit, to carry on that work over the next several years. My business, the way I'm supporting it is I'll be using my business, my platform, my partners in the kind of midterm, long-term economic recovery needs. The kinds of things that I did as mayor, as being on the board of directors of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments when I was in government service, that sort of thing. And then Sarah, I just had a funny thought when you were talking about Colorado and the racial issues we're facing here. When I ran for mayor, I ran on a four-way race against mayor, city mayor, and two other city council members, one of whom's husband was a former mayor of the city, and they lived in my town for 40 years. And she was telling people, well, there's no way this guy is going to get elected. She's like, he's a Texan, he's a lawyer, and he's Black. There's only like 4 or 5 people in the whole town. They're Black, and most that's his family. And, you know, the funny thing is, I was pretty sure I knew otherwise. And so when the race was being announced on TV at, Colorado Springs, CBS Channel 4 was the announcement. They announced that there was going to be a new mayor, and they kind of looked at the numbers, and I had won by 75.6% of the vote, which was, according to our city clerk, the largest ratio ever in a contested mayoral proceeding for the 132-year history of our town. So while I am both the world's most optimistic person and a state of continuing sadness over all that we're experiencing, I know that we can work together to make things much better. And I think this panel is reflective of this. And my partners in the UK and in the mayor's office in London are all joined together, and all of us across our country, to collaborate and to carry things forward. So thank you. Panel, Nigel, Mark, Rob, Sarah, fantastic. Aaron, I think I'm going to see if you have any questions from the audience and see if we can address any of those questions that have come up.
Yeah, absolutely. We have questions coming in on the Q&A function. I've got some questions that have been texted to me, so we've got a host of questions coming in. So I'm going to start with a question about one of the themes that all of you talked about, which is this kind of beautiful and innovative and valuable partnership that you've seen between industry or the private sector and government. I'm just wondering what you see as, potentially like a spillover effect of that. Do you see these types of collaborations moving forward on other types of global issues or global crises? One of the folks that asked this question, said, do you see this, impacting things like how government and private sector work together on global warming? Or are there other kinds of big picture issues that you think this work can really help with? And that's to all of the panelists.
Sure. Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah, I'd love to start. As somebody who moved from the private sector into government service in this time, one of the things I really feel strongly about is that government is us, especially in a liberal Western democracy. We get to run for office. We get to vote our folks in. We all have access. And so one of the things I feel like is an incredibly powerful moment of COVID and this innovation and Energize Colorado and the things we're seeing in the UK is that I would love to see more rotation of people taking a term of service, going back to the private sector, coming into government. And I think we'll be able to sort of unlock some of the barriers that we've talked about by having more flow in that area. So innovative procurement, moving faster, being more equitable, getting out of some of these silos. And I think it will be more powerful for all of us. So one of the things we've been really working hard with in Colorado is the Colorado Digital Service, which is where tech entrepreneurs, tech folks, really deep tech people take a term of service of a year in government and do IT and data analytics and solutioning there. And I think that is a program that we should make universal and free that up and have that flow.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to go. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because Hartree is kind of going for its next big program of funding, much like the national labs. We look for 4 or 5 years worth of funds. And actually the next one is going to be largely around increased interaction with private sector, all the way from the very beginnings of somebody creating a startup up to either exit or they continue to the point where they don't need us anymore. We house companies on site and give them privileged access to the infrastructure and the scientists that we have. And I think that's kind of the way that we're seeing a lot of the innovation run, right? Is there's a lot of research that happens in both of our countries, and actually some of the really, really big computational science work that's happening around COVID is cross-Atlantic. But once that research is done and we look to deploy it, we tend to try and do it through private companies, right? And in this day and age where people are arranging multi-million-pound contracts in a short number of weeks, setting up transatlantic collaborations in a few days, government needs to be able to respond more quickly to these kind of private sector initiatives. So the big thing that I think has come out of this that I'm hoping the US government will be taking up, but certainly the UK is already looking at, is the routes through which we fund private companies for early stage R&D to get their products off the shelves. It's going to become much, much quicker. We've already demonstrated that we can do that kind of thing in 2 or 3 weeks of peer review rather than 6 months or a year that it takes to do an RFP. But I think that's the big thing that I see coming, is we've shown that when push comes to shove, a lot of these processes can really, really be sped up, and they should be.
Aaron, you had, that's a really interesting question. I think it's really important. If you look at satellite imagery from space, we see that there are pyrocumulus clouds from the fires burning in California, where the top of it has reached, because of spikes in the troposphere, to 55,000 feet. That we have the smoke cloud now over Europe and over New York. We're all one connected planet here. And some of the things that that occurred to me after I had been appointed to the board of directors for the National Center for Atmospheric Research, which is our nation's premier national lab in weather forecasting, climate analysis, and earth sciences, was to really kind of push some of those initiatives forward to look for the kinds of things that we could use to make an immediate impact, but to not give up or push aside the long range issues that will make a difference to our lives, hopefully, but certainly our kids, our nephews and nieces, and those who come behind us. And so we're really pushing on that. And then for my other national lab partner, we're looking at employing synthetic data sets to try to get the best use out of the data that we have access to, but also look at models where we need to use synthetic data sets in order to train our AI to do the best that we can do with the task and issues in front of us.
Great. We are starting to run out of time, but I've got, and unfortunately we're not gonna be able to get to every question that's been asked, but I have one question, and it's sort of gonna be a lightning round for all of the panelists. This is a question from the audience. If you had the chance to go back to right before COVID happened, what advice would you give yourselves to prep for what lies ahead?
Who wants to jump in on that one first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I would say react quickly. I think as an organization, I think people were, or some organizations were a little bit in denial in terms of, the sort of lockdown and what that meant to workforces. My advice would be, be prepared to react quickly and make those changes and sort of dive in there and not be afraid of the virtual world.
To follow on Nigel's, after reacting quickly, just accept the pivot. And I mean, everybody kind of had a pivot in today's world, and some more than others, but it's usually those pivots may at the short term may look a little scary or unknown, but at the end, in the long term, they usually end up being a really great thing for a company.
And I would say, oh, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, thanks. I would say that continuing to communicate externally so there's a big initial rush when things happened and lots of people went digital, lots of people were looking for ways that they could contribute. And then certainly what we've seen is that things have kind of quietened down as people have got used to the new normal, which is working remotely. And people are just getting a little bit quiet, I feel. Business development between organizations has slowed a little bit, we've seen. And I would suggest that one of the things that I'd be asking myself to do 6 months ago was to set something in my calendar to keep talking to people every month, even if there's nothing particular that's happening, just to chase up possible leads and to keep relationships going.
I resonate with all of those. And for me, I would have given the guidance, and I still give the guidance to myself and to others, is to set a longer term horizon. We're living in this crisis mode of 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, a month, a month. We're going to be here for a while, potentially years. And so being clearer and longer term, giving about what you're doing. So saying we're not going to reassess virtual in 2 weeks, but instead maybe in a year, and we're going to commit to it for a while. I think it relieves people of some of the day-to-day stress and allows them to refocus and make some good decisions. So I would say longer term thinking, recognizing that this is with us for a long time.
Yeah, good point. I think, Aaron, I would have probably sent out more emails and texts saying, still here, let's stay connected, let's support each other, let's make sure that we're aware of what we're going through emotionally and professionally. We'll come through this and we'll do the things that we were doing well before, and we'll do those better afterwards.
So thanks, everyone. Thanks for sharing all those lessons. Those are incredibly valuable and really helpful. I'd also just like to say thank you for joining us. Thanks for serving as our panelists. I thought this was a really rich discussion. Thank you to everybody who joined us from an audience perspective. We really appreciate sharing our morning or afternoon in the UK with you. So thanks, everybody, for joining, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.